Why are the Rockets cutting Carmelo Anthony? Will the Sixers regret trading for Jimmy Butler? Are there more trades in the works in Philly? The only question left is, say it with me, you in? Hey, sports fans! Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown Podcast. Today, I'm happy to have friend of the Breakdown, Kurt Helin, on the show, who is in charge of the lovely NBA page over at NBCSports.com. Kurt, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Good to talk to you, man.
For sure. I mean, we go way back. It's always nice to talk to you about the NBA or anything. So, are you ready?
I am. I'm always up for talking about the NBA. It's nice, another quiet week around the league. I don't know what there's to talk about, but maybe we can find something.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about how Hartenstein's doing on the Rockets.
The Rockets, I honestly, I'm just not horribly concerned about them. I think that they're going to kind of figure it out, but the step back was bigger than they thought. There's obviously the Carmelo situation, but to me, it's like their problems are much bigger than just Carmelo Anthony. Their communication on defense has been bad. They're just missing shots. Carmelo doesn't solve their problems, but he's not their biggest problem, sadly.
Sure. Well, let's unpack some things there because it's on my mind today as I'm doing a video on this. But, you go through I've gone through about 90 of the 150 possessions that they have for Melo that he's used this year. And, okay, you can do a nice montage, and perhaps I even will, of the one dribble pull-up from 18 that he does, which, certainly would probably get Daryl Morey on the phone pretty quick, even if he makes those, I feel like. But you're right. It kind of feels like, at the very least, he's on a really cheap contract for them. There's no reason to sort of panic after 10 games and talk about cutting him. And by the way, it seems pretty clear they are going to cut him. It's just a matter of when, right?
Yeah, it is. What I've heard now is, but by the way, this is a little bit about them and a lot about him. Like, he's not comfortable in the role. He's not really thrilled coming off the bench, which gets into a whole nother topic we can get into down the line about where he lands. But if he's not going to accept the role as a bench player at this point, I'm not sure where he lands in the NBA period, but he certainly doesn't have a role on a contending team like the Rockets should be. He's just not going to have that kind of freedom, that kind of space. Here's what one person told me, and I think it was kind of smart. He's the seventh best player on that team, give or take, sixth, maybe eighth. But if you're James Harden or Chris Paul and you want to sit down with management and say, I don't think I'm being used right, we've got to find a way to get me the ball here, or I've got to be used in this kind of way, or I've got to get more minutes here, or whatever it is. Talent is so, I don't want to say sparse, but there's not enough elite talent in the NBA. You sit down with those guys, you have that conversation, you keep them happy. If you're the seventh guy on the roster, eighth guy in the rotation, you're like, play better, figure out how to fit in. Like we're not having deference to you. You are not entitled to this. And Carmelo Anthony, because he's a future Hall of Famer, because he was the best scorer in the game for, 5, 6, 7 years, feels entitled to that kind of deference. And he's just not going to get it. He's got to accept the role. Vince Carter's done a great job with that in Atlanta. I was just talking to him when he came through L.A. So other guys, some guys are comfortable in that role. He's not. And that's just not going to work for either side.
Well, here's the thing that's interesting is because from what I understand, he's not the kind of guy that's going to be grandstanding in the locker room and getting in the coach's face. So I guess what I infer from what you're saying is that on the court, he is simply going about his business the way he wants to do it. And that's probably making them feel like there's no way they're going to ever get him to change. Yet, even in absence of any kind of major face-to-face confrontation between any of these guys, right? Like, that's not happening.
Yeah. No, I don't think that there's bad blood there. I just think that they're not comfortable with where the relationship and how it's going down is. It's just an odd animal. He expects, I think, and thought he'd have a bigger role on this team. But, this is now the second year in a row where he's been on Oklahoma City is a good team. The Rockets are obviously a potentially very good team. And he just can't thrive in that role. And if you've been going through the tape, yet offensively he hurts them some. Certainly defensively, they were a little over 10 points. I think it was 10.4 points per 100 possessions worse when he's on the floor. he can't defend, and you can't have him out there in crucial situations.
Great. Okay, so that brings us to our next point, which is also really what we're talking about here. Would you like to hear my theory of why he's being cut?
Okay.
Because after this, we could talk about JFK and RFK too. But but here's the thing: he gets signed a little bit later in the summer to a minimum deal after they cut him from Atlanta. It's September 14th, 15th. Less than a month later, Jeff Bzdelik suddenly retires on the eve of the start of the season. And he said he had been thinking about it a little bit before that, and then notified them the day before their preseason started. I don't think those two things are unrelated. Now, cut to all of a sudden, Jeff Bzdelik's going to come back. But no, he's not going to come back right away. He's going to come back in a few weeks. I don't think those two, and all of a sudden, they're talking about Melo being cut. I don't think that those four things are unrelated.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I don't know how much one player moves something like Bzdelik. And by the way, can you imagine what they had? Like, the owner had to sit down with Bzdelik personally and get him to come back on the team. Do you know, like, what kind of Brinks truck you're talking about to get this guy to come back? Like, he just got a healthy raise with that move.
And by the way, we should let everyone know, just in case they don't know, Jeff Bzdelik coached Melo in Denver, but also was the associate head coach of the Rockets and the defensive guru, who clearly his absence was felt. And I've never heard of a coach have, especially an assistant coach, ever have that kind of pull where they could say it's either me or Melo. But here we are. Maybe, right?
I think that there could be a little something to that. I think it does make life like easier. I've seen them early in the season, and it's gotten better. But when I saw them in person early in the season, their communication on defense was just terrible. And a year ago, they were on it. They switched everything. They talked a lot. They were, by the end of the season, on one page, to use the coaching term, they were on a string, right? Defensively, they were switching everything. They knew where guys were going to be. They were sharp on their rotations. They'd planned all season for this, specifically to go against Golden State in the playoffs. But they had it down, and they looked like a team early in the season that just hadn't practiced it enough. Like, they just thought that part of it would come back, where I think even more than offense, you could speak to this. I think defense is the side you got to really drill more. Like, that's where the drop-off happens faster. Your talent can win you some – your talent can get you some buckets on offense. If you've got James Harden, he can just go get you some buckets. Mm-hmm. But if you're not practicing defense, if you're not working on that communication, it comes apart fast. And it came apart fast for them. And now they're trying to put it back together on the fly. And that's easier said than done. Some teams, San Antonio's actually done a really nice job of that. I was just looking at the stats today, because remember, they started off terrible. They had the DeJounte Murray injury, and they just stumbled out of the gate. Last 9 games, they're third in the league in defense. Like, Popovich is smart. He got the guys back to playing their system. It's going to be a little tougher, I think, in Houston, because with or without Carmelo, they still don't have Trevor Ariza. They still don't have Mbah Moute. And those guys are long, switchable, smart veteran defenders who knew what they were doing.
Yeah, that's the problem I think Daryl Morey tends to have, is that he treats these players as assets without really, considering the chemistry issues, A, and then B, he probably thought, we can just recreate that, no problem. We'll find a guy who looks like them, and they'll do the same thing. The switching is what we're the key thing that the Rockets were doing that was done so well, and that's what you're saying about the communication has to be on point, especially in the realm of a new season where teams have now had a whole year to really look at the switching, look what works against that, and how to combat that. And if you don't come in right away with all those things in order and your communication in line, and then practicing defense, I think we're seeing what's happening here. And then you throw the thing on Melo now. I want to draw a comparison to the Thunder last year in my video, and I'm wondering, maybe you can help me. His numbers weren't terrible, and to the point where if he was scoring his 15 a game, it kind of negates a little bit of the awful defense. But what do you think that there is something there? Is there a Melo problem between that he's just bringing to a locker room before he even puts his shoes on?
The funny thing is, I don't know how much when you say locker room, I don't think it's a chemistry thing. Like, guys like him, they respect him. And when they were talking about letting Carmelo go, my first thought was, well, how does that play with Chris Paul? How does that play with James Harden? They like him. Chris Paul also, as anybody who's been around him in LA will tell you, is as competitive as anybody in the league. He never wore it on his sleeve in a Kobe Bryant kind of or Jimmy Butler kind of way, but he's got that same fire. He does not like to lose. And, I think that will compel him to kind of get past the Carmelo thing. Like, well, he's not helping us. Like, I got to win. He's not helping us. How do we get guys who will help us? Right now, they've got a guy on a two-way contract who's helping them more, so he's going to get the minutes. And I think there's a part of Chris Paul that's okay with that and can separate business and friendship.
Oh, I mean, do you think it's possible that they are mulling this decision or have made a decision without asking Harden and CP3?
No, there's no way that didn't. That no organization should do that with their stars. So that's actually, to put it more bluntly, that's how you lose stars. Like, not including them in those conversations. Not necessarily, by the way, making them the decision maker, because LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, and many stars before them are rather horrible at GMs. They're not good at that role. But you consult them. You get their opinion on things. You say, hey, we're thinking about X. Because if it's going to be a huge problem, it might not be worth it. If Chris Paul and James Harden were going to revolt at this, then it wouldn't be worth it. Clearly, they're not. Like you said, they're moving on. And I know it's been reported and kind of what I heard, they're just trying to find a landing spot for him. Like, they're not just going to throw him out into the wilderness kind of cold business. Like, they're trying to wait for him to find a spot, and they'll just kind of go on without him for a while.
Right. And walk me through that, because if they cut him, he goes to waivers and anybody can pick him up. How does that work again?
Yeah, exactly. If he is cut, he is waived. And remember, he's on a minimum salary. Generally, when you see guys get waived, Tyson Chandler, ends up with the Lakers. He was making, I'm going to forget the exact number now, but it's a little north of $13 million. Nobody's picking that up. Mm-hmm. Like, nobody's like, you know what I need is $13 more million on the books for a backup center. So he clears waivers. Carmelo's on the minimum, a veteran minimum. So the idea that he'll completely clear waivers is kind of interesting. Like, probably will, because now you're getting into the team politics thing. Like, if, let's say the one name I heard that makes any sense at all, let's say Miami is like, all right, we'll take him on. I'm not sure that happens, but let's just hypothetically say that's going to happen. So he goes into waivers, and you're a team like, I don't know, who's worse than them, Phoenix, and goes, you know what, we're going to snatch him off waivers before he can get to Miami. That doesn't always sit well with an agent that spent a lot of time trying to get him to Miami. It doesn't sit well with other agents and other teams. So there's that kind of politics going on, but it's going to be he will eventually get waived, go through waivers, and then we'll see where he lands.
Yeah, I heard Lakers, but it sounds like the Lakers, can't do it.
Without getting into some stuff with sources, no, it's not the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's not very desirable. I hate to say it to people who are fans of Carmelo at this point.
I don't know about you. I feel bad sometimes, like, kind of thrashing him, because he's a future Hall of Famer. Like, he is not just a 10-time All-Star, 6-time All-NBA. He was in the NBA, I'd say, from pretty much maybe the year before he went to New York, certainly when he was with the Knicks, for a 4 or 5 year stretch. He was the best kind of scorer in the NBA. He wasn't terribly efficient. The guy could get you buckets inside, outside. He could score a lot of ways, and he could just put up a lot of points, and it kind of made up for the defense and everything else. It's just kind of faded. And by the way, remember, it's the Basketball Hall of Fame, so the 2 gold medals, I think it's 2 gold medals, and the NCAA championships count as well. Like, he's a future Hall of Famer and a great player, and I don't like being dismissive of him this way, but that's not where he is right now, and he can't accept the role for where he is now.
We all have our roles in life, and today I'm assigning you one. I want you to head over to theathletic.com/Coach Nick so you can save 40% off the subscription price and get all of their amazing written content and analysis of the NBA. They've hired practically every big-name writer in the NBA space. Every day is another long list of great articles to read, and guess what? They just added a weekly video series called Inside Coach Nick's Brain, and it's done by some dude named, Coach Nick. I've seen the first 2 episodes, and they're really good. And you can only watch them if you go to theathletic.com. So use my link, theathletic.com/coachnick, all lowercase, save a whopping 40% off the subscription price, and enjoy all their great content, including the ability to get inside my brain. Well, let's move on to the next big news we've had this week, which was the Jimmy Butler trade, because that kind of, I think, caught people a little bit off guard, maybe not, or we knew he was going to get traded, but maybe not to the Sixers. But Sixers give up 2 starters and a pick and Jared Bayless. I'm not really sure how we categorize Jared Bayless at this point, but
I wonder if he gets waived. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have Butler now on Philly. What are your thoughts?
So much for the process, right? I mean, they are all in. It's win now with them, and to me, and I think you probably wrote this. I think I saw that on B-Ball Breakdown. If it wasn't you or one of your guys did, I've kind of felt the same way, which is it's a gamble. It is absolutely a gamble by them, but not a bad one to make. If you're going to go big game hunting, they struck out last summer. You look ahead. I don't know that they're getting Kawhi Leonard. I really don't think they're getting Kevin Durant. Kyrie Irving wants to stay in Boston. I don't know anybody who thinks Klay Thompson is leaving Golden State. Sorry, Laker fans. So if you're looking at that marketplace, you're like, hey man, let's take a swing at Butler. If we can get Butler now and keep him in house, I'll give up some pieces. That way, it's kind of the opposite of what the Lakers did, right? With Paul George. Like, no, we're not going to give up pieces. We'll get him as a free agent. And that doesn't work. They've kind of learned the lesson from all that. They went in, but it does make them win now. And they don't have enough shooting, and they don't have the depth to go with, I think, Boston and Toronto right now. There's more moves coming. They've got some time. And also, Coach, wouldn't you say the other thing I always wonder about these teams when they get thrown together, especially with young guys like Embiid and Simmons, we kind of take for granted how willingly Golden State and, frankly, Miami and San Antonio before them, these veteran teams sacrificed individual numbers, sacrificed individual touches and parts of their game for the betterment of the team. Are the Sixers up for that? I mean, I hope they are. I think they are. I think Brett Brown can teach them that. But at the end of the day, these guys have to accept that kind of sacrifice, or you start to go Wizards.
Yeah, and because Butler is going to get in people's faces, and I had said that Ben Simmons is the kind of guy I don't think it's going to get bothered by his intensity like that. I do wonder how Embiid will react, because he's a kind of a happy-go-lucky guy who, he can get intense when he needs to be, but I wonder if that's going to be an issue. Butler is certainly not the shooter that you kind of describe that they need. But it's interesting about this whole thing. I think the thing that's not being said is that their whole impetus for doing this is not because Toronto or Boston. I think they suddenly realize, holy crap, Milwaukee is now leapfrogging us, and we can't have that. So we got to do something, because Milwaukee is now looking like the team that could beat anybody in the East. Yeah,
actually, I think Milwaukee is. Well, right now, as of today, we'll see where this is. We're 10 to 12 games into the season, but right now Milwaukee is better. They absolutely are better than I don't know. Toronto's off to a fast start, and every year I want to believe in them, don't you? Like every year you're like, man, they look good. Yeah. They're doing this right. And this year, it's not the same coach with the same offense. It's not DeMar DeRozan, and it's Kyrie Irving. I'm sorry, Kyrie Irving. It's Kawhi Leonard, and he would like to show you his Finals MVP and remind you that he can step up in the big moments. And that said, I'm a little hesitant. And the Bucks, I like them a lot right now. I like their role players. I like the way they fit together. You've probably done some breakdown stuff on them, but Giannis is Giannis. But right now, the way they're spacing the floor, the way they're getting looks, the way Brook Lopez fits with them, the way they've simplified their defensive scheme, and they're giving up a lot of threes, but they're taking away the paint. They're not making the kind of stupid mistakes they made before. They just look fantastic.
Yeah, I love the people they put around, and it's really amazing how, because you could argue that, with the Jason Kidd stuff, the spacing, it was weird that he wouldn't have said, we need you about 3 steps back than where you are. And we have to stop throwing it to the elbow every single time down. All of a sudden, you got dribble handoffs, you got attacking in the middle, you got forcing closeouts, and you got compacting the defense. It's really amazing how, even if it's a little bit even subtle on offense, it's unlocked a lot of what's going on for everybody. And what we've been waiting for years. I mean, it was amazing to see how even with shooters around Giannis before, he still didn't have any space. And now they do, and so they figure some things out. And I think this is what happened with Philly, was that they're kind of panicking now. They easily could have gone on the road they were going on and continued to improve and slowly do the process. Yeah. I think the biggest concern they probably have is whether or not they're going to be able to keep Butler after all this.
Yeah, I think that is a concern. I mean, look, I think there's 2 things with that. A, it is a concern. This is a guy who's been unhappy with his teammates his last 2 locations, and he doesn't think they work hard enough. And he's got some. At some point, it's not the teammates. Right. That is out there. He has a rep as a bit of a diva, as a guy who works hard. I don't want to question that part of it, but a guy who's not always the easiest on teammates, not always the easiest to get along with. Poor Markelle Fultz. I mean. I got to feel for like the guy with the shaken confidence already. And you've all seen it, probably everybody listening because they're great basketball fans who, go to your site and listen to your podcast. They've seen that free throw from last night where just, oh my gosh, the hitch in the free throw, and just he is coming apart at the seams. And now the alpha personality and withering glares of Jimmy Butler come in the locker room. But I think the other question, not even the other question. The other interesting part of this is, what kind of deal do they give him? I mean, are they going to give him the full 5 years, 190 that they can? Because I can tell you for sure that there were teams really hesitant to get into the Jimmy Butler sweepstakes because they fear that next contract. He turns 30 before he signs it. And to use my boss's terms at NBC, this isn't he doesn't have driving around the city miles on him. He has off-roading miles on him. That Tom Thibodeau has run him into the ground for years. Plus, he plays in a all-out aggressive, reckless style that we love. But that, ask Dwayne Wade, that takes a toll on your body. Derrick Rose, a bunch of other guys. There's a sense around the league that you don't want him for 5 years. That you're going to regret at least the last 2 of that. It'll be interesting to see what the Sixers do, but I feel that that really puts some pressure on them with the window. Like, you've got to get it done ASAP. You've got to get these guys in here. This year is going to be I don't want to say write this year off, but there's going to be a lot of things to figure out this year, and then you're going to learn some lessons in the playoffs. But rolling into next year, you've got to be ready to go. Assuming you re-sign Butler, you've got to make the offseason moves to have this team ready to go and compete with Boston and Toronto if they keep Kawhi Leonard and everybody else, Milwaukee obviously. So you've got to be ready to roll. And by the way, wherever Kevin Durant lands, and if he comes to the Knicks, that gets interesting. So you've got to have that thing ready to roll next year, and that puts some pressure on that front office. Like it's now, like you said, the process is dead, the hand holding is dead. Markelle Fultz should be texting with Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram about being thrown into the deep end. Like, go swim.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even Drew Helin, who was trying to help him rebuild the shot, has severed his relationship with him. And I'm not sure who the source was that was reported, but certainly, they made it pretty clear that they don't even talk. Like, it was unceremonious, to say the least. And I'm not even sure if Butler. I mean, maybe he wanted to be around for Butler to bully him, but I don't think that Fultz has any trade value as it is. So, what other moves can they possibly make? Who's around?
Look, Korver's a name you hear a lot right now. Oh. You can certainly get him. Provide shooting.
Now you're talking.
I think that he can fit with them, and he could kind of, again, he's a veteran willing to fill a role that I think could help. I don't think I know the Carmelo name has come up, but again, he's got to accept a role there, and I don't know how you fit that in. Fultz, by the way, I think he would have some trade value to a developing team that might be willing to take their time with him. Brooklyn, for example. I mean, they're not going to give up a ton for him. But, and by the way, I am glad Karis LeVert's injury isn't as bad as it looked, because that was so scary last night. But a team like Brooklyn, or I was about to say Atlanta, but they kind of like their point guard. Same with Sacramento right now. But there are teams out there, maybe Phoenix. Somebody might be willing to bring him in if they can get him at a good price, and being willing to send back a veteran who can help Philly right now. Just to roll the dice and see if, hey, this guy is a number one pick. I don't know what you've got to do to get him back to looking like he did out of college, but if you can, you get something, because coming out of college, he was going to, I don't know how good, but he was certainly going to be better than what we've seen.
Yeah, I mean the confidence is, I hate to even use that word, but it could certainly it looks shot. He won't shoot it anywhere inside of 10 feet. So, and by the way, when you go through the footage, you do see some nice finishes. He does get to the rim hard, and he can finish there. So it's not like there's nothing there that he can't do, and he can handle the ball. But it is unprecedented what he's going through. And hey, I'm available if he needs some help. I've been more than happy to help him, and we know exactly how to do it too. So it'll be.
I wonder. You have to wonder, because what went. Was it the trainer, or what happened that caused the confidence loss and the weird shot change in the first place? But what's the relationship now? What's working with him like? And I don't really have an answer there. I'm kind of curious, because Drew Hanlon has a great reputation and he's helped other guys. Like, not every personalities are personalities, and not everybody can work with every trainer and what have you. But I'm wondering what the deal is there. Because that's a couple now he's gone through that just haven't worked for him, and I don't know. I don't know how you get there. I don't know if he needs a sports psychologist at this point far more than he needs a physical trainer. But there's a lot of work to do there.
Yeah, and there's a subset of the NBA trainer or the basketball trainer in general who is knowledgeable about biomechanics and functional movement. I don't think that Drew has. I mean, he certainly doesn't have the letters after his name for that kind of information. Yeah. And you need to go back to the drawing board and start to go to build that up and figure out. It sounds like he probably did hurt himself at some point, which is what kind of led all this stuff to happen. Maybe he was too embarrassed to say that he was mountain biking and fell off or whatever happened, and it hurt himself. So, but yeah, there's a lot of sort of functional movement things that need to be addressed that aren't clearly. They're just trying to minimize movement and try and isolate certain parts of a jump shot, and that's not going to work. I could see him getting frustrated after he started in the summer, so this isn't just he spent 3 weeks and it didn't work. This is months and months. The problem you're in the middle of the season.
And I think your point is valid. This is, going back, I know that they did this with Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, and it had limited effect because, God, that was a bad shot. But, you're talking about with him at this point, I think you're right about getting a functional movement guy and going back to the drawing board. This is an off season all summer, working out every day with the same guy, changing your whole structure and how you do things and strengthening different parts to get back there, because it's broken right now. It's not just mental, it's physical, and then you've got to get the physical part back, and then you've got to somehow get the head right too, and it's just a tall order. But I could still see some team taking a risk on it, just because if you can find a way to do it, and for Brooklyn, to use the example I used first, that's a good development program. Karis LeVert, again there, but they've Spencer Dinwiddie, on and on down the line. They've developed guys, so maybe there's some potential there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I got to tell you, the potential for you is not there because you already have realized your talent coming on this podcast. So, Kurt, I can't thank you enough for lending us all of your expert analysis and information.
Hey, I'm always happy to do it anytime, man.
You got it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Kurt?
I'm in for sure.